Hi, hello to you all. Welcome to Emotional Companion, a channel that shares knowledge to comprehensively develop oneself through good books. Today, I would like to share with you a useful psychology book called Don't Please Anyone. In life, there is a very common type of personality, which is the type of person who pleases others. People with a pleasing personality often fear rejection, fear making others unhappy, even though they have their own thoughts or needs. They are strict with themselves to the point of forgetting their true feelings. Outwardly, it seems like concern and consideration for others, but deep down it is a denial of oneself. Psychologist Karen Horney once said that not being able to be oneself is the root of all despair. The habit of pleasing others will make us live in internal conflict, increasingly distancing ourselves from our true nature. So how do we know if we are falling into that cycle, and how do we get out of it? This book will give you a comprehensive view of the 8 behavioral patterns characteristic of the pleasing personality type, analyzing for us the underlying causes, while also offering practical and feasible methods of change. This is a psychological self-help therapy that helps you clearly identify your behavior, the invisible fears within yourself, thereby helping your inner self become stronger. When you learn to love yourself more, you'll find life freer and more comfortable, just like the Buddha taught. Before loving others, know how to love yourself. And now, please listen to the content shared today. Diagnosing whether one has a pleasing personality. Before conducting a psychological therapy, we need to diagnose whether we belong to the pleasing personality. The author has provided 26 behaviors. If you have less than 8 behaviors, you almost do not belong to the pleasing type or are only at a very low level. If you have 9 to 17 behaviors, you are a long-time pleaser. If you have 18 to 26 behaviors, you belong to the group of people who please others at a very high level. So what are those 26 behaviors? First, not daring to refuse others, afraid that once rejected they will be angry. Second, afraid of making others unhappy. Feeling that they are unhappy, we also feel uncomfortable, afraid that once rejected they will be angry. The third is always worrying that the relationship will break down if not agreeing with the other party. Fourth, every day trying to meet the needs of many people, feeling tired and helpless. Fifth, always going along with others, not daring to express their true thoughts. Sixth, gentle temperament, no distinct personality. Seventh, complying with rules, obedient, never daring to challenge. Eighth, having many friends but not feeling their sincere affection. Ninth, not daring to make requests, afraid of being rejected. 10th, when others treat you well, you don't know what to do, even feel uneasy. 11. Having a deep inferiority complex, not daring to act. 12. If not recognized by others, feeling that you haven't done well. 13. Afraid of being isolated, wanting everyone to see you as a good person. 14. No clear boundaries, always taking on too many responsibilities for the lives and emotions of others. 15. No matter what you do, you hope someone agrees before you feel at ease. 16. Using excessively high moral standards to force yourself. 17. Afraid of competition, not wanting to make decisions. 18. Always trying to keep a smile on your face in front of others. 19. Never getting angry, never speaking up even when attacked by others. 20. Not competing, always playing the underdog. 21. Often feeling insecure. 22. Suppressing emotions in your heart, not daring to express them. 23. Thinking that human nature should not exist. 24. Always sacrificing yourself for others and then telling yourself that it is a virtue called dedication. 25. Often criticizing yourself, thinking that you are not good enough. 26. Inner conflicts, not knowing how to choose to please both yourself and others. Well, above are 26 points to help you recognize whether you are a person who pleases others. Self-awareness will always be the most beautiful starting point for us to be able to live truthfully with ourselves. When you look deeper into your inner self, you will realize that there are many behaviors in the unconscious that are actually the constraints of a pleasing personality. And in daily life, people with this personality often unconsciously repeat familiar behaviors that they themselves rarely recognize. And next, I will share the 8 most typical behavioral patterns. 8 typical behavioral patterns of a pleasing personality. The first behavior, feeling uneasy when refusing others. The book mentions a case like this. At the end of the year, a female employee is immersed in busy work. At that moment, a colleague who is also a close friend comes to help because she is assigned an urgent task. Hearing the plea, she immediately falls into a dilemma, feeling both confused and worried. One side is her own work piling up, the other side is afraid of refusing her friend, which will hurt the relationship. This is a typical manifestation of feeling uneasy when refusing others of a pleasing personality. So what is the psychology behind this behavior? The answer is fragility. People who don't dare to refuse others often feel that everything is fragile. Others are very fragile. If you refuse, they will be sad, they will be angry. Yourself is also very fragile. If you refuse, others will be angry, and you will also be sad and worried. And this relationship is also fragile. If you refuse, the relationship between the two will break down. The reason for feeling fragile is that pleasing personalities often fall into a state of childhood. When we were children, we had to completely depend on our parents. If the parents are gentle, with full of love, the child will develop healthily. But if the parents are hot-tempered or scold, then in front of the image of the tall and authoritative parents, the child will be scared, feeling weak and very small. From then on, this psychological shadow can last until adulthood, so when refusing others, they often easily fall into a state of childhood, not realizing that they are an adult, but making themselves like a child trembling before the authoritative parents. The consequence of this is that we will be tired of struggling, meeting the needs of others, as well as refusing the real needs within ourselves. In the end, nothing is complete, and we ourselves become even more frustrated. So what is the way to change this behavior? Because of fragility, this type of person needs to cultivate a strong inner self. This is the core solution. A strong inner self will start from daring to say goodbye to the past. We are no longer the helpless children of yesteryear. Be brave to face and embrace the child within you. The child is still trembling, still afraid of being abandoned. This is also where the origin of our fragility is stored. When you no longer deny that fragility, you will be able to establish a boundary for yourself to be able to refuse with a peaceful and strong inner self. So how do we refuse others? To refuse without being uneasy anymore, first of all, you need to clearly define what you really want, what your values are. Once you are clear, make a decisive decision and take responsibility for that choice. You will no longer be torn between accepting or not accepting. And the important thing is that once you have refused, you will refuse without needing to apologize. People with a pleasing personality will find all sorts of reasons to justify their refusal. For example, if I refuse, they will be very sad, but the more you find reasons, the more you will lose confidence. So be frank and honest with the other person about your difficulties or thoughts. Sorry, I can't help you with this. Sorry, I don't want to do that. Because a strong adult is not a person who nods to everything, but a person who can both refuse, help, love others, and also know how to love themselves. Then, the next is the second typical behavior of a pleasing personality, which is the instinct to unconditionally agree and go along with others. I remember once a newly acquainted friend came to stay for a few days, and when I asked if he wanted to eat an apple, he said yes. I peeled 2 plates, but when I came back, I saw that his plate was still full. At that time, I really didn't understand why he could say he didn't want to eat, why he had to go along with me. Actually, that is a behavior of going along and agreeing with others of a pleasing personality. And the psychology behind this kind of behavior is self-suppression. Any suppression causes great harm. The instinct of life is to reach out, like a seed taking root and sprouting, then turning towards the light. As if self-suppression is like placing a huge stone on that seed. Over time, both the body and the personality change. People who are used to living in suppression will not dare to reveal their personality, even lose the ability to express emotions, only know how to conform to please others. You will see many people suppressing their emotions, their eyebrows often furrowed, a deep vertical wrinkle between their eyebrows. The underlying cause of this behavior is in two aspects. The first is that they believe that having their own opinions is a dangerous thing, because when expressing different views, they will feel ashamed for not being like others or afraid of taking responsibility if that opinion leads to undesirable results. And the most typical is the fear of conflict when opinions are opposed. But in fact, conflict is a natural part of this life, like day and night, yin and yang. The important thing is not to avoid conflict, but to find the value of yourself in that conflict. Then the second reason is because they do not accept themselves. In the book, there is a case, that is, a girl who clearly likes quiet but always agrees to participate in lively parties with friends. The reason she does this is because she thinks that introverted personality is bad, is inferior, is not sociable. So she tries to create for herself an image of being lively and open in front of others, but that is not her true nature. So what are the consequences of this behavior? That is, we will never have a real relationship filled with love, no matter how much you try to agree with others, because the agreement only creates a peaceful shell on the outside, but inside is an empty space that is never filled. Not a few people spend their whole lives doing things they don't like, just to please their parents, to please others. That prolonged agreement will make us lose true happiness. So, how to break free from this situation? The most core method is to learn to recognize and accept your true self. Try meditation, observe your breath and the sensations of your body to connect with your true self. If you define yourself by houses, cars, money, positions, fame, then that self is extremely fragile and easily swayed. But if you recognize yourself through true emotions, through your body, through life experiences, you will find yourself more stable. When you find yourself, you will realize that no personality is absolutely good or absolutely bad. Even introversion, even liking to be alone, even when you decide to do a job that cannot meet the expectations of others, all can become your strengths, as long as you accept them as a natural part of yourself. Another way to cope in daily life is to learn to say no in a gentle way, and at the same time, learn to express your emotions instead of erupting. We live truthfully with our emotions does not mean that we can say whatever we want, or that we are blunt and rude to others. For example, there are people who only eat fruit that they peel themselves. If you say bluntly, "I'm afraid of being dirty, I won't eat it," the other person will easily feel rejected. But if you agree but then leave it there without eating, it will be even more awkward. The best way to behave is to be honest but respectful. I can say that I have a slightly special habit of only eating when I peel it myself, please don't mind. That way, we will still keep our boundaries while still maintaining connection with others. Then, the third typical behavior of a pleasing personality is not daring to ask for help from anyone. In the book, there is a case like this. A girl one night felt unwell, wanted to ask her roommate to buy some medicine, but thought it was late, she must be sleeping, so she endured it. So she struggled until the next morning. Unexpectedly, her body temperature rose to 40 degrees C, and she had to be hospitalized. At this time, she thought of calling her mother, but then thought that her mother was so far away and had to take care of her frail grandmother, so she endured it. So she endured it again. This is the manifestation of the type of person who doesn't dare to ask. And the psychology behind this action is that the inner self appears in two opposing states, both self-deprecating but also self-loving. Self-love is having the feeling that the whole world needs to revolve around you. Like the girl in the example above, the reason she didn't dare to ask for help was because she thought that if she spoke up and was rejected, her self-esteem would also be hurt. And self-deprecating is the feeling that I am not worthy of being helped, not worthy of being loved, of being praised. Often this has its roots in childhood. For example, a child gets a score of 9, happily reports to their parents, but the parents say that one test doesn't say anything. The important thing is to take the university entrance exam. When they grow up, they will form an inferiority complex, so for those who are both self-deprecating and self-loving, they will outwardly appear strong, but deep down they are filled with complexes. The consequence is that people with this kind of psychology will often find it increasingly difficult to feel love. The author gives an interesting definition of love like this. Love is mutual annoyance. You cook me a warm meal. I gently take care of you whenever you are sick. Love is when parents raise us as children, we will take care of our parents when they are old. Love is today I share my heart with you, tomorrow you lean on my shoulder. Love, in the end, is the support and assistance between souls. If you have never dared to ask for help and not let anyone help you, life will lack many opportunities to be loved. So the way to get out of this situation is to resolve inner conflicts, get out of the emotional impasse. The best way to get out is to enter a state of unity. Unity between the self-loving self, the self-deprecating self, and your true self. And the technique that helps us to easily apply the most is to stop all thoughts. Self-judgment always originates from thoughts. But we have a powerful ability that when we focus on our breath, all thoughts will stop. The breath is like a small anchor that helps the mind no longer fluctuate. When awareness returns to the rhythm of breathing, we will also clearly feel the life within ourselves. That is also when we unite closer to our true self. Then from the level of consciousness, return to concrete actions. You should boldly ask others for help when you really need support. If someone refuses you, don't be afraid of that. But we should understand that that person is an organic body and the refusal is just a sound emitted from an organ on the body. They have their own reasons, so they refuse. Let go of the fear of being rejected. It is no longer something heavy haunting you. At the same time, look at the good needs hidden behind self-deprecation and self-love. You are afraid that you are not worthy of being loved and cared for. In fact, that only comes from the desire to be loved. When you understand yourself clearly, you'll be able to easily enter a state of unity with yourself, live more lightly, more freely. Then there is another behavior that is the opposite of not daring to ask for help from anyone. That is, before anyone says anything, they are quick to help. There are many people who like to help others, but when someone ignores them without thanking them, that person will feel hurt. This is a manifestation of a pleasing personality. The psychology behind this behavior is the desire to be recognized. Outwardly, it seems like unconditional help, but in essence, it still hopes to get affirmation from others. The cause of this behavior can come from a fear of being isolated and also from improper upbringing from a young age. For many people, the only way to be praised by their parents is to do what their parents want. When all praise comes from doing what others want, the child grows up very easily to become the type of person who pleases others. And another reason is that they cannot determine the boundaries between themselves and others, so they like to interfere in the affairs of others. The consequence is that the more they help, the more they feel exhausted. There is a saying like this: a person who gives too much will create a person who is too dependent. If the help is for the purpose of pleasing others to achieve something, often the people who come close to you are those who want to depend on and take advantage of you. Another thing, the tragedy is often that the more you help, the harder it is to receive gratitude. Because when you have the mindset that I am a good person, I help you, then unconsciously you are putting yourself in a higher position and putting the other person in a lower position than you. Human ego is very sensitive. They feel the position that you attach to them and don't like being in a lower position. Therefore, they often choose not to be grateful to react. So how to get out of this situation? The best way is to clearly define the boundaries by clearly identifying your life lesson. Psychologists say that the purpose of life that each of us is born for is to deal with our own life lessons. The lessons include all areas of life such as study, work, way of life, way of communication, etc. The less you interfere in the life lessons of others, the better. For example, many parents always interfere too much in their children's choice of a life partner. In fact, this is interfering in the child's lesson. The result is that the children are not necessarily happy and mature, but the relationship with the children is increasingly damaged. Another useful method is to write down on paper who the subject of the action is. For example, Kwan wants to buy rice, Hang wants to complete the report. When you look at that, you will know that those are the things that belong to the life lessons of others. Remember a living principle that don't always proactively do anything for anyone that they can do themselves. When you give up the role of a good person, try to reduce your enthusiasm, even learn to refuse, you will see that the relationship does not easily break down as you thought. Finally, a simple way is to stand in front of the mirror and say that I am good enough, I am good enough. It sounds naive, but it is sowing positive suggestion in yourself. Gradually, you will see that you don't need to prove that I am a good person anymore, nor do you need to help others just to get recognition. In addition, you can also practice the habit of giving credit to yourself by praising things that are directly related to you. For example, today I am great, I learned a new thing. Today I exercise really well. Absolutely don't praise because you helped others, only praise what belongs to you. These are the words of credit that increase inner strength and the ability to appreciate yourself. Next is another typical behavior of those with a pleasing personality, which is always doing what others expect. This behavior often occurs in family relationships, intimate relationships, or close cooperative relationships. For example, there are children who study according to the majors that their parents choose, work according to the jobs that their parents like. Or there are people who always try to become the ideal partner according to the model that the other person wants. Such people often act without considering whether they like it or not. As long as it is what others expect, they will do it. They pursue the recognition of others and do everything to be accepted. The main cause comes from the fear of risk, the avoidance of responsibility, and the obsession with recognition. When doing what others want, they feel at ease because there is a tacit guarantee. If the result is not good, the fault is not entirely theirs, but partly because of the other person. Because I listened to you, but in fact, this is a way to avoid responsibility and risk, reflecting a lack of maturity in personality. Moreover, it is due to the obsession with being recognized too much. People with this kind of behavior often think that if they are not recognized, it means they haven't done well. From then on, they increasingly require themselves to do better and better. So what are the consequences here? That is, these types of people will lose themselves and distance themselves from success. Because a person does something that does not come from a love of it, but only does it to please others and achieve recognition, it is very difficult to achieve success. This is a very confusing cycle. The more you want to be recognized, the more you lose yourself. The more you lose yourself, the harder it is to get real recognition. So how to break free from this psychological chain? That is, change your perspective so that you know that real recognition comes from within, not from without. When you really love a job, you won't feel tired. On the contrary, you will have endless motivation to move forward. This is what helps you shine in the work you choose. At that time, you will realize that you don't need to seek recognition from outside because your sincerity and wholeheartedness have naturally attracted respect. And if someone recognizes you, it is only an inevitable consequence and is no longer a goal for you to chase. More importantly, you have found true freedom in your heart. A deep and lasting recognition from yourself. Next, a sixth typical behavior of a pleasing personality is proactively spreading goodwill with a smile, or not daring to get angry. A smile expresses goodwill. This is a normal thing. However, even if your mood is not good, but as soon as someone appears, you will immediately smile and talk to them, that will be a problem, because this behavior shows that you always lack a sense of security. Some studies have found that in primates, when a low status is threatened or attacked, it will smile. The intention is to convey, I am very obedient, I am harmless, please don't attack me. From an evolutionary perspective, humans are the same. Behind a smile that proactively pleases others is the plea for others not to hate me, to alienate me, not to harm me, and to exchange for a peaceful environment. But does doing so really achieve safety? When everyone's feelings depend on others, then naturally people will always live in anxiety and insecurity. Obviously, when we put our safety on the shoulders of others, it is a very unreliable thing. At the same time, being used to proactively smiling to gain safety will make many people, when encountering attacks from others, also react with a smile to get through it. But if you suppress resistance and anger, that energy does not disappear, it does not go outwards, it will inevitably turn inwards. Therefore, learn to build a sense of security for yourself. But that doesn't mean encouraging you to attack, to respond to others in anger and hatred. But it is best to stop smiling when you are not happy. Don't force yourself, allow yourself to be silent when necessary, and learn to express your anger in the right way. Instead of erupting in fits of rage, you can leave when you feel disrespected. That is not a defeat or a lack of civility, but you are defining your boundaries and can focus on yourself. The next is another behavior, never getting angry. People who never get angry often bind themselves with the thoughts that a person of high morals will never get angry. This behavior also comes from the way parents orient when the child is young. For example, a child cries because they are bullied, but the parents only say, "What are you crying for? Don't you see that your parents are busy?" Then gradually the child will not dare to express their anger anymore. Over time, angry emotions will become vague in awareness. When emotions, even if suppressed, do not disappear but will turn into a burden on the body, turning into tangible matter such as the appearance of tumors in organs sensitive to emotions such as the thyroid gland, the mammary glands. Therefore, taking care of and relieving emotions in a timely manner is extremely important for health. Both erupting to the point of losing reason and trying to suppress it are manifestations that you are resisting it. And the more you resist, the more energy you give it. Instead, accept it. When that emotion arises, stop, sit still and observe. Just the awareness of the anger at that moment is already healing for yourself. Then we will go to the last section. The eighth typical behavior in a pleasing personality is often blaming oneself. There are people who, just because a task has a bad result, regardless of whether it is their responsibility or not, they will always self-examine and judge themselves, thinking that it's because I haven't done well, it's my fault. At first glance, this seems like courage, taking responsibility, but behind it lies a deep psychology of self-blame. Imagine everyone standing under the sun has a bright side and a shadow side. That is a complete person. But for those who are too self-blaming, they always want to eliminate that shadow side, just hoping to keep the bright side. Therefore, they often set extremely strict standards to pursue highness and good results. There is a saying that in life, the person who makes you suffer the most is none other than yourself. Strictness and the pursuit of excessive perfection not only reduce the effectiveness of all work, but also harm oneself. Therefore, stop judging yourself, learn to love yourself. The author says that self-blame is sometimes just to avoid the criticism of others, or because we have accepted the value system of social judgment too much. So we become overly strict, not allowing ourselves to have shadows, even not accepting the existence of the dark side in this world. When seeing shadows in others, immediately label them. They are bad people, inferior people. But life is not just black or white in an absolute way. Therefore, accept the shadows, accept the imperfections in yourself. At the same time, let's learn to be grateful. Even if today's results are not as expected, but look at what you have done. Even if it's just a little bit, be grateful for that. Gratitude will lead you to a complete and fulfilled self. In that light state, you will no longer crave, no longer desire excessively, no longer seek recognition from outside. Force yourself to meet the strict requirements of yourself. On the contrary, that fullness helps you to complete your work well, and happiness also naturally arises from within. Self-help psychological therapy summary map. Self. Above are the atypical behavioral patterns of a personality that likes to please others. At the end of the book, the author introduces a comprehensive method called self-help psychological therapy. Self. Self means self. The self is a reminder that the path to release all pain ultimately lies in ourselves. In fact, the psychological analysis that points out the causes or solutions in each of the above behaviors is the specific application of the self-therapy. However, sometimes you may still be confused and not know what to do. Therefore, you need a large map to escape the maze of emotions. The 8 steps of self-therapy are also like a compass for your own healing. And those 8 steps include the following. Step 1. Self-observation. When emotions appear, stop. The best way is to calm the mind by meditation, observe the inner self, and contemplate that emotion. Step 2 is to accept the emotion. The most important principle to free yourself from the pleasing personality is not to suppress and resist emotions. If you are angry, if you are uneasy, or if you are anxious, if you have any emotion, accept its existence and allow it to exist. When you truly accept, the emotion will automatically disappear, but make way for balance and peace. Then, step 3 is to connect resources. In moments of weakness, don't hesitate to seek help from reliable people, from books or psychological experts. After accepting the emotion and getting support from external resources, you will realize the false beliefs, the fears within yourself. This is also step 4, transforming beliefs. For example, when you think, if I refuse, people will abandon me, question your own beliefs. After that thought, are they reasonable? Does a true relationship really last if it is based on you always having to go along with others? It is honesty and clear boundaries that help relationships become healthy. And the fear of being abandoned is just a reflection of old beliefs that need to be replaced with new beliefs. You deserve to be respected and loved even when you don't please others. When the beliefs in you have been transformed, you need to consolidate them by improving your skills. This is also step 5, learning to set limits, practicing physical and mental health, eating healthy, reading books, listening, sharing from reliable sources. Those are the best methods of practice to help you improve every day. After that, we will go through step 6, which is accumulating experience. Beliefs only truly turn into strength when you practice them in life. Gradually, you will realize that saying no, which seems to make you hated, actually brings respect, love, and true happiness. And from there, you enter the state of step 7, loving yourself. You know how to cherish emotions, know how to take care of both body and mind, understand your own value. The final step from that love, you can be at peace in the body and mind. A state of stillness, living sincerely, freely, radiating positive energy, and peacefully accepting life as it is. Just like the sage Rumi once said, you have wandered through thousands of worlds just to find yourself, and finally I wish you peace, happiness, always brave enough to be yourself on every path. Thank you for listening. If you find this video helpful, please share it with those who need it. Don't forget to give yourself a like, press the subscribe button and open the notification bell to watch the latest videos every week. Once again, thank you all, and see you in the next videos.